10, M. Knight 44. Congressman Frank, earlier this week you remarked that the National Equality March in Washington was a waste of time at best. You went on to state that the only thing that we're going to be putting pressure on is the grass. Could you elaborate on your rationale for these statements further? Were you arguing that the LGBT community is pursuing the wrong avenues for change? In light of the battering the First Amendment has taken over this last decade, is it prudent to criticize such protests? Yeah, it's prudent. It's prudent to tell people what you honestly think. And let's not overdo it. There was no danger to people's First Amendment rights. Here, I've been critical. Indeed, I've been struck by the fact that Mayor Bloomberg continues to get a lot of liberal support. Go back to 2004 during the Republican convention. That was one of the worst examples of protesters being abused and mistreated and locked up unfairly. The police department in New York behaved in a very bad way at the mayor's direction because Bloomberg, at that point, Bush looked popular, the wall looked popular, Bloomberg was currying favor with the Republicans. That wasn't happening here. But I will argue that the LGBT community is pursuing the wrong avenues. Let me do two examples. I think people would agree that two of the most effective political organizations in the United States are the National Rifle Association and the AARP. Does anybody here remember the last National Rifle Association march, shoot-in? I mean, did you see them walking up and down the mall with their guns? Or the AARP people, of which I'm a member, so I don't mean this negatively, but have you seen us shuffling along, waving our canes? The answer is marches and demonstrations may energize the participants. They do literally zero to influence Congress. What influences Congress? The NRA knows this, and they're very effective. I vote against them all the time, but I know how it works. If they have a legislative objective, or they have legislative objectives, every member of the NRA, and everybody here, she knows it sometimes, thinks, writes to members of Congress and calls members of Congress. Members of Congress respond to political pressure that is applied to them by people who live in their districts, or state, if it's a senator, and write to them and say, this is important to me. If there are 50, 100, 1 million people on the mall, how do I know who they are from, and whether they're from my district or not? Now, it doesn't do any harm, as I said, but here's the problem. Most of us have lives other than politics. We have jobs, we have families, we have recreation. People are only going to put a limited amount of energy into political activity. My fear is that people who made the considerable effort to come to Washington from maybe 1,000 miles away, hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, and stand there and listen to speeches all day, believe that they have done something important for a cause they believe in deeply. I share that belief in that cause. The problem is, I think, to too many people, that will be it. Okay, I've done my part. I went to Washington. And it becomes a substitute for the kind of real activity that I believe we need. So that's my problem with the march. I think it becomes a substitute for what we really need done. But as far as prudent to criticize a march, there's a paradox here. People are saying, in the interest of the First Amendment, they're criticizing my criticism. No, you don't advance the First Amendment by telling me not to say what I think. And there was no danger that people were going to be harassed or in any other way hurt by that march. Look, I'm working very hard on trying to get a gay rights bill through. The president's about to sign a hate crimes bill, the first bill in American history to protect those of us who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. I've talked to the chairman of the committee. I think we will soon have a vote in committee and then on the floor on a bill that protects lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people against discrimination. Early next year, I believe we will get Don't Ask, Don't Tell repealed. People standing on the mall do nothing to help us get that done. People writing and calling their representatives and senators do. And it really comes down to senators. I believe we have a president ready to sign a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, an employment non-discrimination bill, a hate crimes bill, and a bill that my colleague Tammy Baldwin is working on to give domestic partner benefits to federal employees. We have majorities, I believe, for all those in the House. I think we have majorities for all of them in the Senate. Hate crimes we've already gotten through. I'm not sure we have 60 senators. So what we need is 60 senators. What I really need people to do, marching may be fun and meeting with each other is fun, but it doesn't help me. Here's what's hard. Make a list of all your friends. Make a list of all the people who tell you that they really care about you and love you. If you're gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, you know what? Say to them, you know what? If you really care about me, you won't support people who are trying to make my life miserable. If you really love me, then you've got to show that by telling people who you can vote for that they have to be there to protect me. Don't tell me how much you care about me and then leave me in a legally vulnerable situation. So get out your list of friends. Get every one of them on the phone or talk to them and say, please write and call your senator. Send me a copy of the letter because you might forget and I want to be reassured. And then if you live in Maine, in particular, where we have a referendum coming up, call everybody you know and say, you know what, I'm going to check and see who voted. We got a low turnout election coming up in Maine because it's a special election. I'm going to see who voted. And if you didn't vote to protect my right to get married, then you must not think much of me. So don't tell me you're my friend and be too busy to vote. That's what wins. Now, you know what? It's boring. I got to say this. People talk about how much fun politics is. I've been a candidate for office every 2 years since 1972. For 10 years before that, I worked for other candidates. Anybody who tells you, who's a candidate, how much fun it is to run for office is either a liar or a psychopath. It's very boring. It's very stressful. You've got to be nice to all kinds of people you want to smack. You got to do things that are boring. You got to beg for money. Similarly, if you want to help other people. And so I would make this rule for people. If you care a lot about an issue, and people have invited you to participate in a form of political activity that's going to be really fun, be careful because it's probably not helping. Because if it's really fun, it means you're with other people who agree with you, and you're reinforcing each other's views. That's what they did in the march. Aren't we unfairly treated? Yes. Wouldn't it be better if we were fairly treated? Yes. It doesn't bridge the gap that we have to get to the people on the other side, and that's what I'm focused on.
Thank you.
All right?